I know that you've got an interest in technology and where we're heading with technology, sitting from the position of a security manager. So just run us through what are your observations and what are your concerns in that regard?
What we're seeing now is more of a convergence of the role of the traditional security manager, which was gates, guards and guns, to a more IT focus. At Western Sydney University, for instance, we have a large system of access control, which we have over the last 12 months handed control over to IT, because with an emphasis on an IT end-to-end solution being provided through a range of different things such as access control and CCTV and these sorts of things. I mean, we found that it's far better to have it managed by IT experts and try to have us as quasi-type experts. That convergence is not without its risks, but for us it has paid dividends because we have been able to focus on what we regard as core business, which is the safety of students, staff and visitors.
Does that mean you need a better understanding of conveying to your tech people the security outcomes you're looking for? And if so, how do you go about that?
It's certainly an important aspect of being able to, articulate where the risks lay. I mean, traditional IT personnel don't come with that risk background. And where we have worked very hard to do is to manage expectations, both ourselves and our IT people, in bringing in specialist IT people into the security fold. Now, we actually have a technical manager now who has an IT background rather than a security background, who actually manages these systems in a co-shared capacity between ourselves and IT. And having that resource there has really paid dividends for us in terms of being able to access, the latest in technologies, whether it be new servers, different types of equipment. We're currently trialling facial recognition as a means of access control, these sorts of things. But as well as that, I think giving us a greater level of comfort in the systems that we use and their fitness for purpose across the enterprise.
Universities are quite a difficult space to protect because they're open, they're friendly, generally young. You've got a whole range of issues there. Surely technology is only part of what you have to do in your role.
Look, it really is. It's a large part, admittedly. I mean, we have an access control system that has 11,000 rooms attached to it, so it's the equivalent of a large multinational. It's more than that, though. When you have residences, when you have high-end research, when you have research that has special government licensing, such as anatomy research into physical containment laboratories, those sorts of things, there is a real emphasis not just on technology, but also policies and procedures and the training of staff in security awareness and how practices need to occur.
We've seen a few medals handed out over the past few years to people working on campuses for bravery in tackling suicides and violent people within a campus. What does this mean for the manpower that you employ, the security officers you employ?
There's a real criticality in the type of manpower that you provide to the university as a construct. At Western Sydney, we have our own in-house staff, and that is that's a decision that we've made based on our desire to provide as good quality guards as possible. We pay above award. We have an enterprise agreement which covers not just all professional staff but also our security staff. It's been our view that providing that corporate knowledge has really provided us with some traction in terms of getting the security message out and in building a security awareness program across not just our students and staff, but also our teaching programs, through our research, through our residences, even our corporate tenants.
That's interesting you have your own in-house staff. Most universities have contract security staff. How could I get you to switch to contract?
To be honest, I don't think you could. I really don't. I mean, the quality of guards that we have They are long-term employees, most of them. They come with a corporate knowledge that is just second to none. It would take a real shift in thinking, not just for myself, but also for our executive team, to realise value in changing over to a contracted model when there are so many benefits in an in-house service that we provide.
Within your campus, what sort of access do you have to the executive team, and how do you get them to listen to you?
Look, certainly the way the university is structured is that I report direct through to the exec team and through to the senior executive team, which is an even smaller group, on matters involving crisis management, continuity planning and emergency management. The contact is unparalleled, and it's a very, very, very good approach, and it's one that I would recommend for any security manager to have that level of access to, I guess, the construct executive team. It really is for us where the rubber hits the road. Our ability to have that contact, to be able to work through issues and to have confidence in the decisions that are being made during a time of crisis in particular is an opportunity for us to provide some really good service to the university.
What's top of your list in terms of priorities in what you do?
At the moment, there is a real challenge with the growing trend of radicalisation of students. We've seen a number of attacks across the US and even here domestically in terms of that whole idea of lone wolf or a radical student base who are taking actions against entities, against individuals. That for us is a real challenge, and domestically it is something which I think all educational precincts are being challenged by. I think it's something which we need to have a firm grip on, which we are only now as a nation coming to terms with the whole idea of the radicalisation of certain sectors of our community youth.
What's your solution to that, though? I mean, on the one hand, you're there to look after the students. By extension, you're almost representing the parents too, who are usually footing the bill for them being there. But there's a fine line between spying on them and protecting them.
Look, there is, and I mean, the way our current view is that in terms of radicalisation, we can't do it in isolation. We don't have the knowledge, we don't have the trust, we don't have the capabilities. What we can do, though, is bring in community, bring in people who are trusted, who have influence, and who are able to assist us. And that's the only way we're going to be able to prevent this.
And how are you going about doing that?
Part of the challenges for us is meeting with the community and working with them in, I guess, managing and responding to these sorts of emerging threats. And we're doing that quite well. For instance, we have specifically recruited guards of the Islamic faith. I have security officers who wear the niqab, who will be part of that community. And these are positive steps for me that show that this isn't an us and them approach, but this is a community issue that we all must address jointly.
How do you identify the credible voices in the community? There are plenty of people that say they represent a community.
What we have seen is over time that there are a lot of people, and this isn't just to the Islamic community, we have seen it throughout a whole range of international spaces, both nations and cultures, where people will say, I represent the community, or I represent this community, you must listen to me. Time and time again, what we've actually done is we've gone back to the student cohort and said, who are these people? Do they represent you? Is this someone that you want to speak on your behalf? So actually a process of engagement is probably the best way that we have found to, I guess, identify who we really should be talking to and who are the people that perhaps we should avoid. So there is a program called TERSEC, which is the Tertiary Security Managers Network. Now, in New South Wales, the university that I work with, we actually manage the state program. And what we are is a collaborative group that not only looks at, I guess, what the emerging trends are, but also, I guess it gives us an opportunity to talk collaboratively about some of the challenges that we face. Now, these are things that aren't just about religious extremism. They could be theft related, they could be research protection related. That's an entire field for us that is a real challenge for us, because national research grants, a whole range of legislative compliance factors need to be considered with the research that our academics undertake. It's actually funded through the universities, and at this point, it's funded by the individual universities as they participate.
But that's New South Wales specific?
New South Wales and Victoria.
Do you see that growing at all? Do you see the potential for that?
Look, I think so. I think as some of the challenges that we face become more and more apparent, there'll be a greater emphasis on resilience, on crisis management, especially across the university space, in our residences, through our public spaces. I mean, the universities really are just basically large buildings tipped on their side. When you have 20, 30,000 people in a common space, you're no different to a small country town in many respects. So I think you'll find that more and more that universities will become the method of sophistication in terms of how information is shared, much like the early days of TISN and the like.
I guess having noticed Melbourne as being a typical university challenge around international students, and I guess common assaults that have happened there and been well publicised, how do you deal with international students and I guess the concerns of their parents about unsafe environments on campus?
International students are a real challenge. The power of media, power of the internet, is something which we really can't avoid and ignore. In crisis communications in particular, where you've got a Facebook post or a Twitter post following an incident, can go from one country to another in a matter of seconds. So it's really important for us as a sector to be on top of those sorts of incidents. So that's a real challenge when we're talking about international students whose English is not their first language, who are coming from areas in the world where perhaps law enforcement and security are not trusted, where the expectations of education, of how processes work in terms of government, are very, very different to ours. So for us, it's all about education and getting them. We do a lot of work in pre-departure when it comes to actually, before they leave the country, introducing the Australian culture, introducing our laws, having them have an understanding of what it is to be in Australia. And that could be anything from driving on the left-hand side of the road to swimming between the flags when they go to a beach. So a lot of work is done in pre-departure and then on arrival as well, where we take them aside and we actually brief them on standards, expectations, and a whole range of other things, which are basically designed to give them I guess an understanding of what Australian culture is about and what we expect from them and what they should be expecting from us in return.
Do you do any sort of social media monitoring in that respect? Or?
We do, and I think that's probably one of the better ways for us to get an understanding of where things are, is that we do a lot of work in monitoring what is being said, and not from a reputational point of view, but being able to provide, I guess, additional services too. And as well as that, is when an incident occurs, we're briefed on what our response ought be. Now, we've had a lot of incidents over the past where media, especially through the subcontinent, have taken issues and made them far greater and far worse than what they are. But having that awareness of what is actually being said and then what has actually occurred as well has enabled us to mitigate a lot of the risk in terms of the reputational harm that's occurred. That and close relationship with law enforcement. We have in New South Wales, we have a corporate spokesperson for international student safety, and he does a lot of work on, I guess, managing the relationships between a lot of our international student bodies, consulates and universities.
Adam, I asked this question not as a student of Western Sydney University, but the recent shooting in Parramatta. So I go to the Parramatta campus, for instance. So your response to that, part of the question, but is it one of those things where this is what keeps you awake at night, is those US type incidents? Because university campuses are just so open, is that one of those worst case scenarios that keeps you awake at night?
Look, I don't think there's anything worse from a sector point of view than an active shooter type arrangement, and a lot of work has gone into the university in preparation for that. And that's not just policy and procedure, but also training staff. Now, we've had to do some fairly hard looking at our own practices, and we've brought up things such as we've actually had simulations where we have brought in actors who have simulated the whole idea of an active shooter in our residences, what our staff will do. The university sector is challenged by the fact that, unlike US, we're not armed. Local police may be a time away. We have residences and facilities that are well away from any reasonable response time of the state's tactical units. They could be an hour away from any response. The average active shooter scenario is over in between 10 and 15 minutes. So there is a real challenge for us in managing the potential for such an incident to occur. We have a very well documented process now that identifies not only how we manage internally in terms of our own security, but how we manage our access control, how we manage our communications, how we evac. It's been tested against, and with law enforcement, a lot of effort goes into training our executive team as well as our senior executive team on expectations in the event that such an incident would occur.